Hey, Paul.
Hey, Jeff. How's your Friday going?
So far, so good. How about you?
Well, sometimes Fridays have their challenges, and I'm working through my challenges,
Well,
which it's a
okay.
segue,
A
maybe.
segue. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're being challenged.
Sometimes it feels that way. I wanted to start our conversation today about leaders receiving feedback. I've been working with a good friend of mine, great colleague, Stu Piotrowski at Badfish Consulting. And she and I have been working with a client, and we've been trying to. We worked on an exercise where we asked leaders to seek feedback from five different folks, gave them some questions, and then they were to schedule them. They couldn't do a survey, it had to be in person, couldn't be online. And they were very enthusiastic with that task and were eager to talk about it. And then what Sue and I wanted to do was create almost like a feedback assessment about feedback, right? So feedback about feedback. And we wanted to just give that to them as a self reflection. And then we would talk about it as a group. And so we did that. And I won't go into the details just yet. We can work our way there. But the concept was we wanted to first ask about triggers. When you hear something and you're on the defensive or there's an emotional reaction, and then you shut down. You're not really able to process that. Then we wanted to talk about, well, recovery. So how quickly do you get over that? And what are some behaviors that you do so that now it's like the person giving the feedback recognizes, okay, you want more. It's okay to share, and let's talk more about this. And then we also even tried to bridge or talk about the conditions that might make feedback conversations easier or not as easy when something is really obvious and observable versus something that's a little bit more hidden and the feedback is almost one person's opinion, right? That can make things more difficult. So I don't know. Have you, what's your experience with the uh, feedback about leadership receiving feedback?
Yeah, like this is really good timing because I've been by happenstance just in a lot of situations lately where I have been having conversations just about that very thing, like how not about giving the feedback, like that's the part of the work, but what is going right or wrong with that process and why we sometimes have leaders who seem to be just taking it in and really like absorbing and doing something with the information, and then where you have leaders that just fall flat and that just something is it just sometimes feels like you are the one giving the feedback as a professional or as just a coach. It feels like did I do something wrong, or is it the person I'm dealing with? Is it the personality? Is it the style of how I'm doing it? So you mentioned things like the triggers, and that really resonate with me because I do see sometimes that is something that really pops up as where that resistance, or you see the wheels turning as I'm not
Right.
taking this in, or I don't know if I hear this from you for whatever reason.
Let's dig into that then, Jeff. Maybe we'll spend some time there. One of the triggers, and again, I'm giving all the credit in the world to Sue. She was really helpful with this, but she wanted to talk about three triggers. The first being a truth trigger, right? The idea that you're not sure if the feedback you're getting is accurate. So you're focusing on, is that true? Could that be right? And you're kind of your brain is like, no, I'm no longer paying attention to what you're saying because I'm just saying no, that can't possibly be true. Have you seen that, or what are your thoughts on that particular trigger?
That can't be true. That I don't think that's right. I don't think that that's a real trigger. Yeah, I mean that is something that uh, right off it's like, well, I don't believe you, and I've seen that a lot of times. Sometimes when we're giving even like personality feedback from an assessment, like a self assessment that they've done, and they're like, well, this is your own interpretation of things, and it's like, well, that's not who I am. Well, okay, like I'm not gonna, but this is where that's coming from, right? So there's that dissonance sometimes that happens, and people may sometimes need more time to soak it in and absorb it rather than just take it in the moment. But I have seen that immediate, oh, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen it both at the individual level, but also with survey feedback a lot of times too. Like, oh, I, that can't be true. Like, our
Right.
people are happy here. They're fully engaged. How can we possibly have 40% engagement? Get the whip, you know. So, um,
Shoot the messenger. Shoot him. You know what's interesting, Jeff, is my son and I both enjoy sports, and we kind of keep up with the drama, particularly in basketball with the NBA, and but certainly some other sports as well. And we started thinking like, hey, if I'm going to sit down with LeBron James and say, all right, LeBron, let me give you some feedback. First of all, he's a veteran. He's played a long time. And so he's probably going to understand a lot of what I'm about to say. Secondly, in sports is so interesting. It's a unique form of work, right? Which, if you think about it, because there's so much objective, observable performance. So I missed, a third of my shots, or I had too many turnovers versus assists, or whatever the deal is. And so if I'm working with LeBron, it's going to be pretty obvious. Yeah, there were 3 times where you threw the ball out of bounds. Let's talk about what that is. Whereas in the working world, particularly in sort of a white collar world, boy, it's like you know what you're trying to achieve. And you can certainly on a day-to-day basis say, well, this is why I'm doing this and how it fits in with that long term. But is it going right? Or is there a way for me to do it better? I could see all sorts of opportunities to go, Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm not buying that. That doesn't make sense. So interesting the way the work itself can lend itself. Should we talk about the relationship triggers?
sure, sure. So what's this
So
about?
yeah, the idea was you're getting that emotional reaction because of who is giving you the feedback. So it might be your history with the person. It might be sort of the respect or lack of respect that you have for the person that's giving you the feedback, or maybe just their style. They might be sending you the right message, but not in the right way, and so that's all. Instead of a warm fuzzy, it's sort of a cold prickly, right? So I don't know. I've had relatively good bosses. I guess I could think of some situations when I was receiving feedback and I was like, not from you. I don't buy it. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, who are you to give me feedback, right? So, obviously, I think this may show up a lot more sometimes with peer feedback. Maybe it's like, well, why are you giving me this feedback, or even upward feedback? I would imagine sometimes, like, well, who are you to tell me this? Certainly, as an external consultant, there's a lot of challenges to prove our credibility and gain that buy-in to be able to have the presence and credibility for that. So I do see this happening. I also really love the fact that you bring up style, because that is sometimes, people are really reactive to that. And if you're um, someone who is really jovial and goes around like, oh, everything's kind of fun and lighthearted in the office, and then you have to have a serious conversation with your employee maybe they don't take that well because it's like, well, who are you? Like, what is this? Like, all of a sudden, you're like Mr. Serious Manager. Like, those are things why it's important to know what your boundaries are and things like that. But and what the long term relationships are. But yeah, I definitely see this play out in a number of ways. But I definitely seen it with peer relationships a lot, where, well, who are you to tell me that I'm doing this well or not doing this well? You're my peer, not my boss.
Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking of 360 programs, and most of the ones that I've been involved with, if you're being evaluated, you probably will have input or maybe even select some of those peers that you're getting feedback from. But yeah, yeah, that was a rich one. When I think back to this is horrible. I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud on a podcast, but when I was thinking back to when I was teaching, and note, I moved out of teaching for this reason. But after a while, I didn't really enjoy and almost ignored a lot of the student feedback. First of all, I got the student feedback weeks after the course ended, so there was nothing I could do with the feedback. But more importantly, I felt like I was in the room with you. You weren't motivated to be there. You never seemed to ask any questions. You didn't care. You were always challenging me in terms of what I thought was right. Why would I believe your feedback on how I presented the information? So it really affected me, and I wanted to be different. And if I ever go back to that situation, I need to work on the relationship triggers and think about how that works.
I mean, I
All
think
right.
that's really good. And yeah, you mentioned 360, and I was just like, where do people usually put the most weight? Right, it's the manager feedback. You also said something, and I'll just mention it, not to derail too much. But I was thinking about it when you brought up the truth. Is also, what's the motivation for receiving as well as giving the feedback, which I think shades all these triggers that we're talking about. But am I actively seeking out this feedback, and why would I be wanting feedback? So that may affect which relationships I would take this feedback from, or why I would believe the feedback coming from a certain source or not. So I think motivation for feedback is a big factor in all of these as well.
Yeah, the system itself, the timing of it. Do I have input in asking certain questions as part of the feedback? Yeah, that's true. That we really opened up quite a bit on that one. Let's just hit the third one really quickly before we run out of time. This was identity triggers. So these happen when the feedback threatens your self-image or your sense of confidence. And I got to tell you, I'll just speak for myself, man, this hits me hard. You know, Here I am, I'm working. I tend to be the type of person, we talked about this on previous episodes, right? I'm the type of person where I feel like I understand what's going on. I'm pretty hard on myself. So if there's anyone who's going to be critical, it's me. And if I go into a feedback session and I think, well, you know what, I had a good year, or I did really well on this project, and now someone says, Paul, about that, whack, whack, whack. Um, so this one's tough for me. How about you? Is this a human thing? Like, is this inevitable, or is this really about something I need to talk to a therapist about, Jeff?
Well, I'm never going to say you shouldn't talk to a therapist, Paul. That's always necessity. But
Hmm.
I would say I would agree as well. This is probably the one trigger that hits home for me as well, because we do walk around with uh, the our own self image and things, and then when you get something that counters that, it is sometimes a bitter pill to swallow. Something that's in contrast to that, and it's a little bit like the truth, right? It's like you're going to really accept this or not. I know it's one of the things that it makes me really pause and actually have to, no, I need to listen to this and decide like what I'm going to do with this. I remember several years ago, I got some feedback that someone was saying that some of my behavior was displaying microaggressions, and I was just like horrified. Like I can't believe that this is something I would display. But anyway, um, something like that. But I I realized like it would be too easy just to dismiss it and then not learn from it. But
Mm,
the tendency was to dismiss it, right? Oh, I'm a
yeah.
good person. I would never knowingly harm someone, or but that was the whole point, right? It's we don't know that we're displaying these behaviors, and that's how
Yeah.
we learn from them. But again, triggers like this is against my self identity, and therefore I'm triggered by it. Uh, but those are often the little pieces of feedback I think that are the richest in giving
Mm,
us the opportunity to understand, learn, and grow. It doesn't mean that you have to change your whole self. It's just a small thing that, oh, this is how you're coming across. You might not realize that others don't see it that way, Paul.
yeah. Um, hmm, that's odd the way you framed that towards the end. Um,
Yeah,
really need to speak to a therapist.
yeah, yeah. So on that note, I think you need to go work on your self identity a little bit more. Uh, Something healthier, if you could. Just
A healthier me. That may take a couple episodes.
well, then we'll have people stick around and watch your growth over the next few episodes. That would be
And give me
something.
feedback. Yeah,
Give
that
me
sounds
feedback.
good.
All right. Well, in the meantime, hope everyone has a great weekend, untriggered, of course, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.